Welcome to the CCS Online Studies Orientation for 2013-2014. This is the material that was gone over in the orientation meeting on August the 2nd, but if you were unable to attend or if you would like to review some of this will be helpful for you. So let's get started. What we're going to be talking about today, as we look at the agenda, we're going to look at the benefits of CCS Online Studies briefly. We're going to spend a good deal of time talking about how the program is going to work. Then we're going to talk about some keys to success. And then you will be able to email me questions if you have any questions at the end. So let's begin. We're going to look at the benefits of the CCS Online Studies program in general, not just for the foreign language, but in general. One of the benefits is that we're able to expand our course offerings. We can offer, for example, advanced placement courses beyond just the AP Calculus that we offer in class. Last year we had students taking AP Biology and Computer Science as well as the in-class. So this worked out very well. We're also able to offer more foreign languages. As you know, we're able to offer 5 foreign languages. We would not be able to hire staff to teach that many languages, but this way we can offer the French, Chinese, German, Latin, and Spanish. And there are other electives available as well that students can take. It also helps us deal with scheduling conflicts because our foreign language, for example, the students can do that at any time during the day when they don't need to take another class. So some of them are taking it first period, some are taking it 5th period, and at different times during the day. So it gives us some flexibility with scheduling. Another benefit of the CCS Online Studies is time flexibility for students. For example, you're able to do work at night, weekends, vacations if you really want to. You are not limited to just learning in class. Let's say that you're out sick for a week. Well, you don't need to get behind because even if you're not able to come back to school, you might be able to do some of your work online. And then when it comes to catching up, you just keep up and you're able to do that fairly quickly. Or maybe you have a family vacation planned and you would like to take a week off and go overseas. You're able to do that, and if you want to work while you're overseas, you can, or if you want to just work double hard when you get back and catch up, it's easier to do than with an on-site class. It also increases student responsibility because you see the online program is designed to develop active learning. Instead of students just coming and sitting in class and being passive and needing to wait for the teacher to tell them everything to do, the online learning program is more active. The student needs to take the initiative to read, to find out, to answer questions, to find out, to get help. It also develops a habit of keeping up with deadlines. In a regular on-site class, you have daily work that's due, you have those things that are checked up every day. Well, in an online program, there are deadlines, but they're more long-term. You have a pace chart that we'll be talking about later, but if the student chooses not to work for a day, there's no immediate penalty. But they soon learn that if they don't work for a day, then their work the next day is doubled up and they're going to get behind. These are some skills that they will need, especially when they get to college. And so that gets into the increasing role of online learning. The State Department of Education is asking schools and students to plan on students taking an online course at least once during their high school time. And one of the reasons is that many colleges are now offering classes online, and that's just the standard way of taking some classes. So by getting it now, you'll learn how to handle an online learning situation when you get to college. Now, the CCS Online Studies program has these benefits which are common with all online programs, but our program is unique in that we also have 100% biblical integration of our program and of the curriculum. For example, here is a sample lesson from the World History class, and it's dealing with archaeology and anthropology. And you notice here that in the 4th paragraph it talks about evolutionists and how Christians know this is not the case. In fact, there's a link that they can click, and if they click that link, then it brings up an external site from the Answers in Genesis page that will talk about, are there 8 men in your ancestry? And so they'll be reading more about that, but it takes them to specifically Christian information. So the material has been dealt with from a Christian perspective. They're going to get Christian worldview formation through this curriculum. For example, here's a question also from the world history. It says, in your opinion, is one's view of history influenced by whether he or she believes that man is descended from animals? And so there's a discussion, and in fact, there can be a discussion forum with other students elsewhere who are taking the same class. So it helps them to start thinking through how the Bible applies to their learning. And when we think about biblical instruction, the qualifications for those who are hired to teach in this online program include these. One of them is a willingness to share their Christian testimony and instruct others in the faith. And they are in agreement with the statement of faith, and they're a living example of a Christian lifestyle. And as teachers interact with students, we find that they pray with the students, they pray for the students, they give them spiritual advice, as well as just giving them the academic lessons. So the teacher interaction that the students will have will also bring in a biblical worldview. So those are the main advantages of the CCS Online Studies program. Now, let's get down to some of the details. How is this going to work? Well, if you haven't already, the student is going to shortly get a startup email that will say it's from CCS Online Studies, and it will have the login information for the Angel learning system. Angel is a generic term for a particular type of online learning management system that is used. And so they will get that startup email. That will come to their school email account, and also the parents will get a copy. I've set up the registration so that parents will receive a copy of all emails that are sent through the system. So if the teacher sends an email to your child, you will get a copy of it. I will be using that same system to send updates, so you will get copies of those. So you will know what all is going on there. But that email, if you haven't gotten it already, you will shortly get it. That will give you important login information, where you go to log in and your password, that type of thing. And then there will be an in-class orientation. We'll be doing that the first few days of school. We'll have an in-class orientation and an online orientation. So students will need to complete both of those, which will show them how to operate, how to work in the class. And here's the types of things that will be done in that orientation. Here is a sample from the orientation class, and in this case there's a video. You can see here this would be a video that the students would watch, which will then explain how to navigate through the system. It will also explain, for example, how to submit assignments. This is called a Dropbox in this system, and so it will explain how they are to submit assignments when they do them. So this orientation will be important for the students to know how they're supposed to work. So then after they complete that, or sometime along then, they will also get a welcome email from the teacher, and they will need to set up a call between the student and the teacher. This might be done by phone, or it might be done by Skype, but this is something that will be done independently. That is, you will need to do this on your own. And this is a time when the student and teacher can introduce themselves to each other, where they can get to know each other, where the student and you as well can ask questions of the teacher of how things are going to work. So that will come very close to the beginning of the course. Then the student is going to submit a pace chart. Now, a pace chart is the chart that tells how your assignments are going to be done and how quickly they're going to be done. Here's an example of one. This is the Spanish 1 pace chart, a sample of one. And what will happen is I will be doing this for the students. I will give it to them. The student has to submit it themselves. I can't submit it for them, but I will have a pace chart for all the students. And the reason I do that is that I fill in dates based on our own school calendar. So you'll notice here that in this sample I have week 1. The due date is August the 16th. That's going to give the students the first 2 weeks of school to complete that first week of assignments so they can kind of get the logistics down and kind of get settled into it. But then you notice that the assignments come along 1 week at a time. And it tells them, okay, during that first week, here are the lessons and assignments you're supposed to complete. Now, they can do those one per day, which is what they would normally do, or if they do several of them in a day, that's fine, just so they're completed with them all by August 16th. And then you see week 2, you have 4 assignments due then, so they do those during the week, and just so they're done with all of them by August 23rd. Students can always work ahead. That's one thing that's important to keep in mind. Students can work ahead of this pace chart, but this pace chart kind of serves as a contract for the students. That the due dates are actual due dates when things are done. And if they're not done on time, then there will be penalties assessed. So the students want to stay, they need to stay up with this pace chart. This isn't just a suggestion of how quickly they should work. It's actually a requirement that they work this. Now, like I said, they can work ahead. So that if they decide, I want to work ahead so that I finish my course early, that's fine. They can do that, and I encourage them to do that, in fact. Or they might look down there and they say, I have basketball practice starting the week of September 13th, and so I'm going to be busy that week. I'm going to work ahead so that I don't have any assignments that I have to do September 13th, that I've got them all done early. That's fine. See, there's no problem with working ahead. It's when you fall behind that you get the problems. And like I said, I give a suggested pace chart to the students because I work around our school calendar. If you'll notice down there, you see that there's a gap between September 13th and September 27th. There's a week off. That's when our fall break is. And so by setting the due dates around that fall break, the students are not going to be expected to do something during that break. If we just did 1 week at a time, then they would have some things they would have to do, or they would have to arrange to do them else at some other time. So I'll have them set up so that they do that their semester ends when our semester ends, and so that everything correlates with what our school calendar is like. So that's how the pace chart works. Now, during class time, your students have an assigned time to be in the tech lab to work on their online studies. They should be doing that. This first quarter, students are going to be required to work on their lessons during that class time. The only time that they might be allowed to do otherwise would be if they've already completed all their assignments for the week. If they finish them up for the week, then I might allow them to work on other things during that class time. But otherwise, that's considered just a regular class. You don't go into your English class and expect that you're going to get caught up on your history homework. You don't go to your science class and think that you're going to do some extra studying for the math test that's coming up next period. You need to treat the online studies the same way, that this is your class time and you are expected to work on it. So they will complete the lessons during class time. Then there will be interaction with the teacher as needed. Most of the work obviously is done online. There are things they read, there are things that they will study, but there will be times where they have interaction with the teacher. They can email the teacher, they can do a Skype call with the teacher. There may be discussions involved. If they have questions, they can contact the teacher. There will be times when the teacher will say, you need to call me so that we can have a personal conversation. This happens in the foreign languages where the teacher wants to talk to you in the foreign language so that she or he can see, are you pronouncing words correctly, and so on. So you'll have interaction with the teacher as needed. Now, let's take a look at a sample lesson, see how this works in the class, just so you'll see what the lessons are going to be like. Now let's look and see how a Spanish lesson might work. Here is from the second unit of Spanish 1, and it's basically a quiz, and so or a self-check. So you have here some questions, and then the student is to match up the words here. So, ¿cuál es la palabra para book en español? So we find the word here for book, el libro. Move it up here, and I'm just going to do things randomly here rather than trying to do them because I've forgotten my Spanish from 40 years ago, but we'll just move some things around here. And so the student would be doing this. They're able to put this together. They can then check their answers, and it tells them that some of them are incorrect. In fact, it shows them which ones are incorrect, which is basically all of them except for that one that I happen to know about, El Libro. So anyway, after they do that, then they can check it again. They can do it again to get it right, and then they go on to the next lesson. And so here's the next lesson. It talks about the classes, the definite articles. Okay, el and la. So they can read through this text here about el and la, and they can also listen to them being pronounced.
El, los, la, las.
Okay. So then they scroll on down. They can see about masculine or feminine. They can read here about plural nouns. As they go through the lessons then, they read this. Now this is something that's important, and I think the students need to realize that this is material for them to read. It's not just material that they just kind of glance over like we tend to do with websites. We tend to just kind of scan websites and pick out things, but this is actually something that they need to read. But they do this, and then they click next, and it goes on to the next lesson. And we have the indefinite articles, un, una, and unos, and unas. And so then down here is a place to practice. So these are the types of lessons, the way that the lessons would work. I mean, there are a lot of other things. They can take an assessment. Assessments are like tests. And so this tells them about the quiz and about the voice activity. And we'll be going over how they submit voice activities and how they do that. There's a rubric, but there are things they need to do, and then they can submit that, and the teacher will be grading that. So that's just some examples of how typical lessons will work in this class. Now, how about monitoring and tracking students? How do you know? How do we keep up with them to see that they're doing what they should be doing? Well, the school is going to be monitoring this. I will be watching. I can track what they're doing, compare it with their pace charts, and I can see if they're ahead or behind schedule. I can check their grades and see how they're doing. Now, again, there's more responsibility on the part of the students. So I'm not going to be looking every day to see if they've done their assignment that day. I'm going to be checking probably once every week, maybe every other week, but at the beginning once every week to make sure they're on track. But then I'll just send a note and I'll say, you're behind schedule here. You need to get caught up. But there will be monitoring by the school. Now there are ways though that you as the parents and the students can monitor, and this is going to be important. The students need to learn how to track their own studies, and then you can keep up with it as well. In PowerSchool, I'm going to put weekly updates in there. I will have the assignments listed according to the pace chart, and I will mark those usually on a weekly basis as to whether your student has completed them or not. But you won't see grades in PowerSchool. The learning management system through the online studies is not connected with PowerSchool, and I will not be able to enter every grade as it is in the learning management system, but I can just mark off, okay, they've done these assignments, so at least you can see what the pace is. But you won't see grades there in PowerSchool. To see grades, you will there are several ways you can do it. One is that you can just log in to the system as your student. You get their name and password. You can log in as them, and there are ways you can do that, and I'll be mentioning that as well. But I can also I'll provide you instructions to get what's called a Mentor Insight window. This will enable you to view everything as the student. You can see exactly the way it is as the student, except that you won't be able to do assignments. You won't be able to actually do any of the work, but you can see what they're doing. You can check up and see how they're doing, check their grades, and so on. So I'll be sending out instructions on setting up a Mentor Insight window in the next few days. So you'll be getting regular emails from the school and from the online teacher where they will tell you, okay, you're on track, or here's what you need to work on. So those are the ways that you can monitor, and I encourage you to stay up with that. Now, based on past experience and what other parents have said, here are some suggestions that will help you to succeed in CCS online studies. First is you should plan for approximately 1.5 hours a day, combining the online time and the homework time, or about 7.5 hours a week. Now, this might sound like a lot, but when you think about comparing this to a regular class, in a regular class, an on-site class, you're in class for 50 minutes a day, and then maybe you have a half hour of homework. Well, all that together, that's about an hour and 20 minutes. Close to an hour and a half. So it's no more time than your regular classes, but it's no less time either. You should plan on or budget that amount of time. Some lessons won't take that long. Some lessons will take more. But this will just kind of give you an idea of how much time you're going to need to spend. And like I say, that 1.5 hours a day includes the time in class. So don't look at that and say an hour and a half of homework. It's not an hour and a half of homework. That includes the time they're in class. You need to read carefully. The online website is the textbook. When I went through the sample lesson, I mentioned this, but sometimes we're in the habit, when we look at websites in general, we tend to just skim the website and pick out the information that we feel is most important. You can't do that here. When you come up with a page, when you click and you come to a lesson, it's not something that you just skim over. That is your textbook, and you need to read it, you need to study it. It's not just glance it over. You need to read carefully to see what it's telling you, because that's the instruction. When you need to contact your teacher, remember that your teacher might be in a different time zone than you are. So, I mean, in the introductory call, your teacher will tell you, okay, well, I'm on the West Coast, so I'm in Pacific time zone. With foreign languages, sometimes the teacher might say, I'm in China. And so you need to make adjustments for that. So just keep that in mind, that if you're going to contact your teacher and it's 10 in the morning here, well, it might be midnight where your teacher is. So just keep that in mind. Be sure and contact your teacher as soon as possible if you have problems with downloads or any other things. Let's say you try to upload an assignment and it doesn't go through. Contact the teacher and say, I tried this and it didn't work. Or I tried to watch this video and it kept stopping. Or I took this test and the computer crashed in the middle of the test. Let your teacher know that your online teacher can deal with these types of things. Generally, I can't help you with those types of things. There are some issues I can help you with, but when it gets into the actual lessons and tests and so on, you need to let your teacher know. If it's a test, for example, and the computer crashes, the teacher is going to be able to restart the test once you talk with them. So just stay in contact with the teacher. Be sure you follow all the steps for turning in the assignments. Look carefully and read carefully. Sometimes they will say you need to copy this and you need to answer questions in English, or you need to answer questions in German, or you need to upload a document, something like that. You need to be sure you follow all the steps and do them correctly. If the teacher says she wants you to upload a document and instead you copy and paste it into a window, she's going to say, I'm sorry, I can't take that. Or if she wants you to upload a document in the Dropbox and you email it to her instead, she's going to say, I can't accept that. You need to follow all the steps carefully. You need to be diligent. Like I said, there's not a daily accountability other than the fact that I'm going to be monitoring for the students to be working during their class period. There are going to be times when you might not get all the assignments done on a particular day. And you'll find out that there's not an immediate consequence to that like there is with an on-site class. You're going to be tempted to say, well, I'll just kind of breeze through this and I'll catch up next week. You'll find that you start getting behind. So be diligent with your lessons. Keep up with your pace chart. I've already emphasized this. Remember, the pace chart is basically your assignment schedule. And so if you fall behind, you'll start getting penalized. Work ahead when possible. As you go through the lessons, you might come to 1 week's assignments and you get through with them really quickly because they're very easy. And you might be tempted to say, okay, by Tuesday, I've finished all the week's assignments, so I don't need to work anymore this week. And then next week comes along and you hit an assignment that is lengthy and it takes you longer than some of the others. And all of a sudden, you've got a lot of work to do that week and you could have worked ahead on it the previous week. So if you finish a week's assignments early, go ahead and work on the next week's assignments. Get started on those so you won't run into that type of problem. The tests that you take may be timed, just as a kind of advance warning. When you get to a test, often the tests are timed. Once you start the test, you can't pause it, you can't restart it. You can't say, well, let me start the test now and then if I don't finish it, I'll come back to it later. You can't do that. So when you're ready to start a test, like if you're ready to take a test and it's in the class period and you're going to take it here, don't start it if you've only got 3 minutes left in class. Just wait till the next day so that you can start at the beginning of class. One key, and I can't emphasize this enough, personal initiative is crucial in this. As I said, you can't just kind of sit back passively and wait for the teacher to do something, or just sit back and just say, well, I'm just going to let somebody else tell me what to do. You have to take the initiative. If you're going to succeed, that's going to be crucial. It's actually important in all your classes, but in online classes, it really is vital. What do I mean by taking personal initiative? Well, part of it is maintaining your pace chart. You take your pace chart, you see what you have to do. Don't wait for the teacher or for me to tell you what you have to do. You need to keep up with that. You look at the pace chart and see what's next. When it's coming up to a test, go back and review the material. Go back through the lessons. Don't think that when you go through the lessons online that, well, okay, I've done that lesson. Go back to them before a test. Review them. Look over things that you might have missed. There's nothing wrong. I mean, it's not like once you've done a lesson you can't go back to it. Go back to it. Review things before you take a test. Review your lessons to increase understanding. You read a lesson, you watch a video online, and you get to the next lesson, you think, now wait, how did that happen? What happened there? Well, go back to it. If you're in an on-site class, you might ask the teacher, but the teacher then might say, well, go back to lesson 5 and read the textbook again. So it's the same thing here. Go back to the lessons and increase your understanding. Ask other students for help. Okay, other students are taking the class too. You can ask them to help you. Don't ask them to help you with tests, but if you don't understand something, ask another student what such and such means. Ask your online teacher for help. If you get stuck, you've gone online, you've read some things, you still don't understand it, drop an email to the teacher. How do you conjugate this verb? whatever it might be. Ask your online teacher. That's what they're there for. You can search out other resources. You can do a Google search. You can find other things. Now, again, you can't do this during tests. Your system is monitored to know whether you're going to other sites or not. So you can't do that during tests. But during your lessons, if there's something you don't understand, do a Google search. Look up YouTube videos on your language. There may be lessons that help you understand it. So take the initiative to do that. And let your online teacher know of problems. Again, don't just sit back and think that your teacher is going to approach you first. In an on-site class, when you're sitting in the classroom, a lot of times the teacher will look and see if you have a puzzled look on your face, if you just seem like you don't understand the material, and a lot of times the teacher will come to you and say, okay, let me explain this again. Your online teacher can't tell if you're puzzled or confused or not unless you ask. So if there's a problem, whether it's something you don't understand, whether it's a problem with the mechanics of uploading files, let your online teacher know quickly. Don't wait until the end of the quarter. Don't wait until the end of the semester and say, oh, I didn't understand that lesson 2 months ago. Okay, do it quickly. So these are crucial. If you keep these things in mind, you will succeed in the class. Now, if you have questions, further questions, I would welcome you to contact me. Feel free to email me at the email address that you see on the screen. But let me know or contact me at school, and I'll be glad to help you out. So I hope this gives you a good start to our online studies program. And I look forward to working with your students during the school year. Thank you for listening.